grew up in a small village in a rural part of Asia where everyone knew each other. There was this man, Bai, who lived on the edge of the village. He was the poorest man I've ever known. Bai had no family, no real home, just a little shack made of old wood and tin, which leaked every time it rained. He worked odd jobs, mostly carrying heavy things for people, or sweeping the marketplace after hours for a few coins. His clothes were always torn, and he often went days without a proper meal. We all knew him, but he was so quiet you could forget he was there. One day, news spread that the king of a nearby city was looking for a long-lost family member. The story went that years ago the king had a brother who ran away after an argument. No one knew where he had gone and no one had seen him since. The king had sent out his guards to search far and wide, hoping to find any trace of him. I never paid much attention to these kinds of royal stories. They didn't have anything to do with us. But then, something strange happened. One evening, while I was walking home from the fields, I saw a group of royal guards riding into our village. I assumed they were just passing by, but then they stopped near Bai's shack. My heart started to race. Why would they stop there? I followed from a distance, staying hidden behind a tree. The guards approached Bai, who was sitting outside, fixing his worn-out sandals. At first, I thought they were going to arrest him for something. He was always so poor. It seemed like bad luck followed him. But instead, they bowed to him. I couldn't believe my eyes. One of the guards stepped forward and started speaking to Bai in a voice too low for me to hear. But whatever he said, Bai's face turned pale. He shook his head, as if in disbelief. The guard handed him a small old medallion. Bai took it with shaking hands and stared at it for what felt like forever. And then he began to cry. I couldn't stand still anymore. I walked closer, trying to understand what was happening. That's when I heard one of the guards say something that shook me to my core. Your Highness, we found you at last. I remember thinking, no way, not Bai. How could this poor man, this man who had nothing, be royalty? It didn't make sense. But the more the guard spoke, the clearer it became. Bai wasn't just anyone. He was the lost brother of the king. He had run away as a young man, ashamed after a fight with his family, and had chosen to live in hiding for years, thinking no one would want him back. But the king had never stopped searching. The next few days were a blur. The villagers were in shock. Bai was taken to the palace, and soon word came back that he had been welcomed with open arms by the king. He wasn't just a poor man anymore. He was a prince. I still visit his old shack sometimes. It's empty now and the roof has caved in a bit. But it reminds me that life is strange, unpredictable. Bai went from having nothing to being a prince, not because he chased after wealth, but because of who he was all along, something even he had forgotten. It's been a year since Bai became a prince. I saw him once from a distance during a festival. He was dressed in fine clothes, standing tall beside the king. He looked happy. But even now, I can't help but remember the man I knew. The quiet, humble Bai who swept the market at dusk, who smiled even when he had nothing. Sometimes I think about how none of us knew the truth, not even Bai himself.